David, wake up.
What's going on, guys? I'm here again with another sit-down interview with owner, CEO Zach, and he works with the Phoenix Suns. He showed us how to make 250K. How he did it. As an entrepreneur. So tune in and and enjoy the clip as well. And remember to subscribe. Peace. Going on, guys? I'm here with another one. I'm here with owner, CEO of Creatitive. I don't know if I said it right, but I was close.
Creative. Yeah, it's a tongue twister. It's a tongue twister.
Zach Colman, he works with players, teams in the NBA, MLB, NFL, and so forth on their branding and marketing and so forth. So we're gonna be, touching on that today. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on.
All right, for sure. Um, we'll get right into it. What made you start a branding agency?
Well, I grew up in a small town, and my dad was an NFL player way before I was born. And growing up, I got to, there was just this point in my life where I had to learn that, I had to stop trying to follow in my dad's footsteps and I had to follow my own path. And I tried a few different colleges and a few different majors, and I ended up just fascinated with visual communications down at Arizona State University. So I ended up going into that program, and I just loved it. It was very interactive, very foundational based, as you'd probably hear a lot as an athlete too when you're playing the game. It's very foundational based. And so there was a lot of strategy involved when it came to how you do things and how things get done. And I after I graduated, I ended up working for a couple of businesses. I job hopped quite a bit, and it wasn't really because of the money. I tended to see it was after years of doing it, it's because I learned everything in like 3 or 4 months, and then got bored. And so at about 2013, I got my at the time dream job, which was as a senior designer. I was working for the Phoenix Suns, working for them in their creative department, and worked there for a little over 2 years before I decided to move on, and still worked for them on the freelance realm for a few years after that. But that was my first kind of take into the sports world, because that's where my passions were growing up, especially with playing sports, trying to somewhat follow my dad's footsteps a little bit. And I still had such a fascination with sports and the foundational elements of grinding and the grit associated with using your motivation and building your skill set to become an athlete. And so I ended up from there working for Pearson Education, and I worked on their educational side for their colleges, helping them as a creative director, working with them and other teammates, creating stuff funny enough, for sports management, and a lot of online classes for sports management and sports, as well as other programs. But that's kind of brought in my fascination of the educational side. So I went from the working for a sports team, working for an educational side, which once I got to a certain point in my career where I just, I'll just say I had a honeypot syndrome. I had, very good boss, and then I had an okay boss, and then I had a very bad boss. And I just got to the point where I was like, it's time to go out on my own. And so I went out on my own, and just lucky of the draw of just having some connections built up through the years of working with the sports team and just meeting people through different events. I got my first gig working with a professional athlete, and I told myself quite fast that athletes are who I wanted to work with moving forward in the business. It's now branched out a little bit further than that, which I can explain later. But that's really how I got into my start with the really short end tail version of how I got my start within branding and starting to work into the sports and athlete environment.
Yeah. Okay. I've realized, talking to entrepreneurs now, I realize, a lot of them, before they started into entrepreneurship, a lot of them, they hate their jobs or they just get tired of it. It's just not the right environment for them. So I think that's one sign that, it's time to start my own thing. Um, you know, to make myself happy and help others as well.
It's a tricky thing. It's a tricky thing because you kind of see it from both ends because it wasn't that the organizations I were at were bad. I mean, yeah, I had a bad boss, and I always tell a lot of people that are still in the corporate world, like, hey, going out there and finding your dream job is different than finding your dream career. You can find your dream career um pretty, I'm not going to say easily, but that will evolve over time. For instance, me doing, the graphic design and wanting to the visual communications, and that's even evolved. But that was my career path. I love the fascination, but finding a dream job is really hard because you kind of get to a point where you might have a bad culture you're working for. You may, have just a bad seed in the situation that's just not have good leadership skills. And so sometimes it's not really the career, it's the job. Yeah. And I kind of see it from the other end now, because I actually do branding is very much associated with, feelings, how other people feel about you. And we can get into that in a little bit later. But culture and the way the team environment is that's part of branding. And so it's funny now because I see it from both ends. It's not always, hey, I hate working the 9 to 5. Like me, I liked routine. I liked routine. My biggest thing was I would learn everything I could possibly learn at a job. And like 3 months, I was just one of those people that I loved to learn. I loved to grow. And so certain things just became easier for me when it came to evolving, like learning certain systems, building stuff. I remember at my last job, um, within 3 months, I was I had about twice as many jobs done as anyone else there within that 3 month period. I think I was at like 160 and they were at like 80 to 90. It wasn't even close. And I was like, I wasn't even working full days, man. I was already trying to pad my time because I was the only one in Arizona. So I was, so I was like, so long story short, all my other coworkers were either in two different states. And so they're all 3 hours ahead of me. And so they all left quite early in the day. But I was like, hey, if I get all my work done and I'm outperforming everyone tenfold, like, why would I? Like, even doing that, I was like, I'm still outbeating everyone. And so that was one of those situations where I just realized I get bored easy. I like change. I like evolution. I like stuff. And when you're at a corporate environment for a very long period of time, unless you're working for a small business where there's ever changing stuff, you're pretty much probably staying in the same position for at least a year, 2 years, 3 years before you have a chance to move up to the next spot. And so it becomes very, very much repetition, which nothing wrong with that if people like it. But I think from an entrepreneur mindset, you just like change. I hated the fact that I had to go in and, very similar to this podcast, right? Sometimes you just don't feel like doing stuff. And there's nothing wrong with at 9 and 10 in the morning if you're like, man, I just can't do this. Like I just can't go for a run right now, or I just can't, work right now. And I liked the ability to be able to work when my mind worked because I knew I could get twice as much done if I was in the mood compared to if I was not in the mood. So I think the back to your point of entrepreneurs just, hating the 9 to 5 grind. I don't think, because I'll be honest, entrepreneurship, it's a nonstop. It's a nonstop. It's very similar, funny enough, to an athlete's regiment. And that's why I really push to athletes and kind of teaching them the importance of understanding, hey, you're building a lot of this stuff in the game already. Let's take that and leverage that to help you grow business, because you kind of see it all the time with athletes as well. It's that concept of hey, you really have to, have a regimen of time and you have to do certain things, and you won't necessarily see the benefit of those things for, a long period of time. But yeah, back like to what you said about the entrepreneurship side, I think it varies for everyone. But I definitely work. I'm a work smart, not hard kind of guy, but uh I I don't work 9 to 5. I probably work more than that, but it varies. And not all that work is like sitting down and grinding in it. It's other things like just driving or going to events or going to meetings or stuff that you're not actually doing work.
Yeah. Okay. Go. What were the challenges when starting your company? What were the challenges that you had?
I can go deep in this one, man. I can go quite deep. I don't know how much you want me to talk about it. It's a Saturday. You got me on a Saturday. I usually don't do podcasts on a Saturday, but I'm pretty coffeeed up because I had to get up and do stuff with my children this morning. So I'm in a
Yeah.
talkative mood today. Um, so starting my business was a grind. Um, I think that there are a lot of misconceptions when it comes to starting a business. I mean, you see a lot of, and I'll just say this off the bat before I get into it. It's You see a lot of stuff online talking about, hey, get to 100,000, you know. You see a lot of stuff out there. You see a lot of people talking about, oh, if you're how to get to 100,000 a year, but then you also see companies out there, they're like, get to 1 million a year, get to 2 million a year, get to 10 million a year. And so there's stages. There's definitely stages, and very similar to an athlete going from a third string to a second string to a first string to possibly becoming a captain. A lot of that does come down to performance, but a lot of that also comes down to leadership and mentality, and how you interact with your team, how you understand certain things that other teammates don't understand. And those usually happen in stages. And so when you're first starting out, nothing. You're like, hey, you really are probably just a freelancer, you're working on your own. Affiliate or things of that nature where you're like, hey, I just want to work online. I just want to do this. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a personal brand and build your stuff up. But I would say the thing that a lot of people don't get about being a personal brand is that doesn't mean you can't have a team, and so you see a lot of public speakers do it, a lot of athletes can do it when they build. It's just they're really the face of the company. And so when you're first starting out, I highly say that, hey, you have to kind of go through a validation stage. You may be going through, hey, I want to do different things or I want to try different things. And I always say, hey, at the very beginning, I look back at people who are like, oh man, I just don't know what to do. And I'm like, you're lucky. Because you know, my business is at a point where if I change something in my business, it costs me a lot more money to change, because if I change it, I have to do it with my team. I have to go through and change processes. I have to start marketing a different direction. My brand somewhat changes. And so I think that the first stage is really figuring out what you want to do. And I personally, I saved up. I was a freelancer on the side. I saved up about 30K within a span of 6 years before I finally took the leap. I actually had a job offer while I was at my other job to fly out to New York City and work for American Express. And it would have been about twice as much as I made at my corporate job, and I turned it down because I had a fear of commitment. I had a fear of, oh, like if I leave my job, like that's only 6 months. What am I going to do after? And a week later, I tried to ask for the job back because I regretted it, and they denied me. And so I ended up using that as my staple point. I still look at that as one of the most crucial times in my life. Even though I didn't get the job, it was a turning point within my mindset that was like, okay, I need to do this. And so in a smart way, said, all right, I'm going to wait 3 months. I'm going to make sure I have all my finances aligned, and I'm just going to have a year's worth of money that I'm going to pay myself. to go out on my own. And when I went out on my own, I was kind of trying everything. I didn't 100% dedicate to athletes yet, even though I had a couple of athletes that I've worked with. I was really just trying to build my momentum and build some clientele. And so I was trying everything in branding and marketing, which everyone would say you need to niche, and it's true, but you kind of need to kind of test some things out, see what works, see what you like, see what you don't like, as you evolve. And I would say at the very beginning, it should be all about you. So when it comes to branding, you know, especially for athletes, but this is for businesses as well. It's not about, getting your initials all styled up and put on the side of your jersey. It's not about going on and doing a social media post. It's about the psychological evolution of yourself as a person. And you are an evolving brand. You are. And becoming a self leader is probably the first big thing that I would say is the most important for anyone. And that is your brand, figure out what you value personally, be like, for instance, for me, very big on integrity. I'm very big on honesty. I'm very big on, I hate talking or working people that have too much of an ego. I think it just diminishes the point of conversation and collaboration. And so I hate ego. I'm a designer at heart, so we're very big on aesthetics, and we're very big on communication. So have certain types of personal values that you want to live by. And that's a branding agency can help you with that. But what really, as an athlete yourself, you are the brand. And so it's not about the logo, it's not about the colors. Yes, those things are good assets to have, but I would say, yeah, I think when you're starting out, I think a very good sign to start is figure out who you are and what you want, to do, and just enjoy the fact that it's going to change and it's going to evolve. And don't put too much pressure on yourself if you're doing something that you don't think is going to reach your end goal right now, because I promise you everything that you do somewhat subconsciously, from a subconscious level, if you have a master plan, and I'm not saying plan out the next 20 years of your life, but let's say you're an athlete looking to become a veterinarian, let's say that a lot of the stuff and the smaller goals that you set up will help you reach to that goal. If you go into business, if you go into marketing, if you go into communications, whatever you go into, especially as a college student, don't overwhelm yourself too much by the, well, am I going on the right path? Am I doing this? Give it a shot. Try it out. Doesn't work, try something else out. Just follow your heart with some head in there. But that went a little beyond your question. I'm kind of ranting now, but yeah, I would say that figure out who you are. I think that's a really good first step is to become a self leader.
Okay. And I know been working with Phoenix Suns. How did you get that gig?
Well, I didn't get that, and that was actually when I was in the corporate world. I actually worked for them. That was a job. Like, I actually worked with them as a W-2, and so I worked with them for almost 2 years on their in their creative department. And I got that job, just by applying to it. I applied. I didn't hear. This is actually kind of funny story. I applied to it because I told you I job top a lot, and I saw it come up, and I'm like, I want this job, and so I applied to it. And
which website did you apply?
What is it called again? I think it's called Teamwork. I think it was Teamwork. I think Teamwork was the name of it. It's probably still is. I haven't used it in a while, but I think
I know that website. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, teamwork.com. They do a lot of sports gigs. So I set up I set my resume over on that, and then they changed their branding. It looks a lot better now. But I I applied for it, never heard from him. I got another job. And so I took another job. And then 4 months into that job, the Suns got back to me and were like, hey, we want you to come in and do an interview. And I was like, crap. And so I went and did an interview and they gave me the position and I had to tell my job that I was only there for 4 months. I'm like, kind of my dream job. I'm sorry. I wouldn't usually just stay at a job for 4 months, um, but yeah, that's how I got to work for the Phoenix Suns. And then when I left, I ended up just doing freelance work for them on the side as well. A lot of sports teams usually have, you know, usually have branding firms create their yearly campaigns, and then they have the internal team, either the digital department or the creative department, work on all the stuff in there. And so it was fun working there, but the hardest part for me working for a sports team was, I create all this beautiful stuff, and then like a day later it'd be on the ground and be all walked over by people. And so it was like, oh, you do all this great work, and then it's kind of out there, and there's lots of hustle and bustle there, and they give you a lot of free tickets, but just like anything, too much of anything is gives you burnout. So I was, going to too many games and being in the arena every day was like, man, I'm not going to enjoy this anymore if I stay here. And so I had to move on from that venture.
Okay. Did you get to meet some of the players when you were there?
We did. I met a couple of players. I'm actually on one of their campaigns they did internally as well. We had a huge digital campaign for their team shop for all their merchandise, and I was one of the, we want to call them models because we didn't hire models coming in, but one of the people that came in to help with get all the imagery and stuff for it. And so I'm still placed over even 10 years later on some of their stuff in their facility. But it was right during the time when they switched to Carver. So we had a situation where the last owner would usually have all these great, it was like probably about 2 years, 3 years before I got there, would have all these, great holiday parties. Everyone was considered a team, the players, the internal team, and all that. But when Carver came in, he kind of took took that away. He didn't want the players associated with the corporate side too much. And so we didn't really get too much involvement with the players, unfortunately. But what it did do was it really taught me the inner workings of an arena. It really showed me how much it is a business. We would have these meetings, and talk about, it was never about the wins. It was never about, oh, how do we get the team to win more games? How do we get this? It was always, how do we get more people in the seats? How do we get more people to buy tickets? And it made me it made me start to go at this mentality of, and I don't think, and I most people would recognize this, but I don't think they realize it, that that's the whole point on why, you know, teams bring in players and great players and want wins, because the more wins the team is having, the more people that are buying seats, the more people are coming to the games. And so it made me really start to see the other side of sports and the business side, which made me really start to see the athlete side a little bit more and understand some of the pains my dad went through, and understanding, hey, as an athlete, you kind of already have your own business. You are a brand, you are a business when you first start out in this game. And every athlete should look at working or are playing for a team as just that. It's a business venture, not a hey, this is my career path. This is a business venture, because injuries, and as you're aware, like having to worry about injuries, having to worry about that next player. You have, your teammates, you have to, work together. You have a game plan, which is very similar to a business plan, but just from a game level, and so a lot of the stuff that players have to do, it's very business oriented. And I hear so many, I get so many athletes coming to me and be like, how do I get more followers, or how do I get more this? And I have to ask them deeper, like, what is the real reason you want followers? Is it, some of them will say, oh, because I want the likes. but that's never really the case, right? It's always
Mhm.
like, oh, I it usually comes from a deeper thing. And that's why I brought up the college thing earlier. It usually comes back to, like I'm trying to find my purpose outside the game. And how do I find that? And how do I bring that to the world? And how do I know that I'm on the right path of leaving that legacy beyond the sport that I'm trying to achieve? And unfortunately, most of these athletes, I have to say to them, like, listen, like you had a blessing here. You didn't just get paid to do what you love. It was hard work, yes, but you also got free publicity on every single media channel in the country. You get free, you get free photo shoots, you get free, this and that. It's free marketing for you. Overall, you're getting free marketing of your brand on a day-to-day basis. And that is really why most athletes get such large followings is to start at least, it's because they're just seen more than other people for free from millions of people for the playing their sport. Yes, I'm not saying that it's, they're bad people and they get it like they don't do anything to get that. But what I'm saying is look at it from that perspective. So I usually come to them and I have to go for more of a perspective of, hey, when you're in business, you learn, like I've gone through so many failures from the business side. Athletes go through a lot of failures from the leadership side, the growth side, and how to evolve to that next level and get to that next position within the sport. Um, but they don't go through the same pain points as a business owner does, especially with their money. And so I always have to come to them and say, hey, we need to kind of look at this a little bit deeper. And we need to go back to the foundations here. And we need to kind of figure out who you are. And that's why I brought that up earlier. It's like we need to figure out who you are and what your personal values are. Because, yeah, you can post all day. Like you can post, you can have, be a Tom Brady. You could have over 100 to almost, a million. You can have over 1 million followers. But if you don't know how to leverage that correctly, or you're not doing it in a path that makes sense to you, then what's the point? You know?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, to answer your question, I didn't really hang out with too many players. So
Okay, cool. My next question is how can anyone or a player or a company properly brand themselves to get a sponsorship or a partnership?
Well, first off, this is a huge topic, especially with nil. Nil out there. We do it's nil is a huge thing going around right now. It's still kind of the Wild West. But the problem that nil with the two problems that are coming up with nil right now are two things. One is these companies are taking advantage of of smaller athletes. It does take a lot of hard work to be creative. It does take a lot of hard work to post a certain amount of times a day, a month, a year. I mean, we would do it for clients, and there's a lot of expenses involved to create this stuff for clients, and so to do it right. And so that's one thing it's slowly getting fixed, but it's slowly evolving to be more even as things grow for the athletes. But two is athletes need to stop looking at branding as getting a sponsorship. A lot of athletes come out with the agenda that, hey, I want to get sponsorships. I want to get sponsorships. And nothing wrong with sponsorships. Sponsorships are great, but there's only so far a sponsorship can take you depending on who you are. If you look at some of the major athletes out there or some of the major collaborators out there, I mean, you could probably count on, two or three hands, the ones that actually get pretty good sponsorship deals. And so very similar to an athlete making it pro, having that percentage. And I'm not trying to bash anyone from trying to follow their dreams. What I'm saying is start thinking about, hey, how can I be more authentic with myself? How can I create a brand around me and stop going at it from an agenda perspective? Start looking at it more as a contribution type scenario. And so what I mean by that is, hey, if you're going out there and your goal right now is if you're in college, high school, college, and you're like, I'm just trying to make a few bucks, you know, I would not necessarily look at nil and sponsorships being a major source of income for you. It's going to take time because only a few people get that. And that's that there's a road to that. If that is going to be your overall monetization for their whole business model, but we're all here to contribute. So try to find, okay, how can I create content that can contribute to my fan base or the people that are following me? And start coming up with those values for yourself and start creating unique content around yourself that one evolves your story, because everyone wants to hear your story, especially as an athlete. You'll have younger athletes, you'll have older athletes. And so start looking at it from that perspective. And then two, what's unique about you besides the sport? Do you want to become a veterinarian? Do you work with animals? Do you like finance? Do you like and I can the number goes on because there's infinite directions you can go. Do you like writing? So there's different things that you could possibly take. And so look at your career path and look at your path within college, or we'll just say college right now, because that tends to be the majority of where the nil and the sponsorship stuff is going on right now. Is look at that as exactly what college is for. Look at that as a learning experience. Don't just take a communications degree because you feel like, hey, I want to become a professional. If you're thinking about becoming an announcer after, okay, that's totally fine. If that's your dream of being a speaker and announcer, blah blah blah, then yeah, take that. But if you're like, hey, like I really have a passion for marketing, or I really have a passion for helping other athletes, I want to create a foundation. Find a degree that you feel that you would somewhat be passionate about and evolve that with who you are. That right there, you're going to have two specific qualities that no other athlete has. And so I like to think about that from a personal brand perspective, very similar to a business in niching. There's so many athletes out there trying to get nil deals that you need to separate yourself. Everyone's competition, even if they're friends. And so you need to somewhat look at it from that perspective. And that what that's going to do is that's going to create you a unique, authentic voice, is going to create you're going to start having a path of what you like to do. So you're not going to get burnout as easy. And that's going to evolve, of course. But then what that's going to do is you're going to start separating out yourself from the other athletes and the types of companies you reach out to. So if you're going to work with, a veterinarian, for instance, if you want to be a veterinarian, you could be doing a lot of posts, with your pet. You could be like, that could be your thing, your pet, taking your pet to the games, or teaching them, doing sport things with your pet or something like that. But evolving your story alongside the other path and how you got there. And that's how you're really going to separate yourself out. But then look at yourself as a brand and other things that you can possibly contribute to the world. So if you're going to be a veterinarian, we'll just keep going down that route because for some reason that's what came up in my mind. Still consider having that be part of your 10-year goal. Yes, you might become a professional athlete. Yes, you may not have time to be a veterinarian, but starting to think about that stuff early will help you set the path towards your purpose outside the game, because I'll be honest with you, I've dealt with a lot of athletes, and even myself, once I started to make a good amount of money, you get to a certain point where you're like, I kind of lost my purpose, because my first driving factor I thought was because I wanted to do this, but I just wanted to make money, and now it comes down to, okay, well, that's not really a driving factor anymore. And so you have to, very similar to athletes, when they get out of the game, they have to start going back and looking at what they're passionate about. So look at it from that perspective, and you'll be able to find sponsorships more authentically. You won't necessarily have to search for them. They will find you. Think about it as a warm approach kind of scenario, unless you're going out there and you're doing nice warm outreach. And what I mean by that is, if you're playing for a local college basketball team, for instance, maybe you're going to the veterinarian clinics around your area and saying, hey, I want to do some, and they may know you already too, so you're able to kind of build that approach of meeting people. It's a community. So connection is another good portion of becoming a brand, is building that connection with people. And so I'm still a big component of just sharing reviews and sharing honest opinions of how I feel about a certain company. Think about it this way. If you were to have all your posts about, let's say, you and your animal, and then you had to take that animal to a vet, and you were like promoting that veterinarian for free and saying, hey, and it all was genuine, it was all authentic. Oh, of course, that once you show them the numbers of, hey, this is how many people came to your clinic because of this post, like, they would be stupid not to. That's the value you can bring up front to try to get those couple of first sponsorship deals. And so doing shares and doing shout outs are always great first way to do it. But that goes back to the point of niching, right? Like, if you're really into animals, don't focus on, if you get somebody that comes to you and says, I want you to sell us this, this, I'm trying to think of something the total opposite here. Owen's like, hey, I want you to promote
Dog
our
food.
dog food. Still would probably be in the same realm. I mean, you probably could, if it probably would be a good one. But if it was something along the lines of, sell us this computer, I want you to sell us this computer. I know you have seen, and everyone's seen those posts where you're like, man, I bet that person's never even used that product. It's forced. It's a forced situation, and so no one buys it. And so you have to start thinking about that in that perspective. You're a business, even if you're still in college, and companies are going to come to you because they want more business. I'm sorry, that's just how it goes. They want more business. And so the more you can have that mindset of, hey, this is our plan of attack. This is my plan of attack. My whole story is already around animals, this and that. And that's direction right there. You now have direction of where you want to take your brand as you continue to grow, and it's unique. And that will just evolve. And then guess what's going to happen? Then eventually you're going to play in the sport. Maybe you retire. Maybe you decide not to pursue past college. Maybe you retire from professional, the NBA or whatever. But you're like, I want to start pursuing dogs. I want to start pursuing something with animals now. Maybe you don't become a vet now. Maybe you've evolved. Maybe you create a nonprofit around animals. And there's nothing wrong with that, because that's still your passion, but all of your content still is relevant. And so now you have your own platform and can leverage that platform towards an end goal of a business. And that's how the athletes really do it. They spend years really kind of promoting some of those smaller achievements that they love, and some of those passions that they love. And then you'll see they'll go out and they'll, be like, oh, I have a nonprofit now for animals, for instance. And now, and then you have a business. So now you're marketing your own business, and then as you grow, that's when you hire other people to like kind of help with taking away some of that skill set from yourself. But yeah, and from the business side in working with athletes, I would honestly say they just have to, one, not take advantage. I do see a lot of athletes coming to me and being like, hey, I'm trying to post. This company offered me $300, or I think the last one I talked was like $600 to post 3 times a day, and for the next year, and they're giving me, it's only $600. I'm like, dude, I'd be charging a company, almost 10 grand to be posting 3 times a day, because of how much a month. Yeah, because of how much time and energy it takes to really come up with the creative ideas and do stuff. And so companies need to kind of look at it that way as well. And yeah, you're going to have the smaller creators, but and stuff like that. And again, as a corporation or a company, I would be looking more at, and this is just back to what I was saying about niching. If I was a veterinarian, I would be looking for athletes that may have a unique voice and tone around a specific audience, because that's what it really comes down to, is your fan base, who you have as an athlete, should somewhat match the fan base of the sponsorships you have. But yeah, I'm hoping that kind of answered your question a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, it did. So let's say, a player is looking for a sports drink company and they just haven't come to them yet. How can that player approach that company the right way? If it's in person, email, call, what's the right way to approach?
Well, I think you're asking the wrong question here. I think you're asking why is the player reaching out to the sports drink company? If and we go a little deeper there, is the sports drink company really the kind of company you want to work with, or are you just looking to make some money? Because if you're looking to make some money, yes, if you need to get a quick little thing there, just to try to get by, great. But if you're really trying to build something for your future, you're really trying to build something, you need to take back and be like, what kind of brands do I really want to work with? And then start small. And so if you're working with a company like that, and let's just say an athlete is very passionate about water. I'll just say water. I know you guys all have to, everyone has to drink water, but let's say he is. Let's say he's really passionate about the qualities of drinking water and not something else. Then maybe he goes to school to be a chemist or something like that around the benefits of water. Or I'm just picking something off my head here, but I'd first start off small. I would not go to a Nike. I'm like, as you if you've seen like Nikes, Adidas, they have pretty big pockets, but that pretty much means they're going after pretty big fish. It's very similar to my world. Companies aren't going to work with me as a brand. Risk is a huge factor. No one wants to tarnish their brand. That's why all the money's paid to the bigger fish, because they know risk is less. There's less risk to make that money or not. And so if you're very big into that and you're like, hey, water, I really want to work with these types of brands that have to do with water, get a list down of, all right, these are the types of brands I could work with. One, because it's going to help those creative juices flowing. You're going to have great creative juice, really easy to create the content. It's going to be fun for you. But two, that's going to be the start of your journey. You're going to now I have a path. I'm not just going to go out and try to grasp at these certain companies. I want to have a list of the types of companies I want to work with. And then from there, you can start small. Like I said, I would start local. I mean, it's funny, so many people look at the Nikes and the Adidas and they go, oh, I want to work with this large brand. I want to work with this large brand. But I mean, drive down your street. Like just take a quick drive down your street. Residential, commercial, industrial. I'm like, I don't think people realize how many millions of dollars are just surrounded in this one block radius of where you live. Like, oh, that house is worth 500. Oh, that house is worth 300. Oh, that commercial building's worth 3 million. Oh, the people in there. So there's money everywhere. It's what makes the world go round. So I would possibly say, all right, well, how about I do this instead? How about I focus on, in my local area, finding 10 brick and mortar places that already know me because I'm part of the local community right now. Much easier to sell. Let's find 10 of them and I'll reach out to those 10. And that gives you a goal, right? That gives you a goal. Okay, I'm going to reach out to 10 people. And that won't be, one, intimidating, but two, that will kind of help facilitate that. In the meantime, use that as practice. Go to these places. You'll get a much better conversion rate. And what I mean by conversion rate is much better chance of them saying yes if they somewhat know you. There's already trust built because you work for the local team, right? So go to those local places, and just pitch them. Just be like, hey, I'm a local player. This is my profile. I have this. Things that you should always get ready. And this is back to what I was saying about understanding yourself as a business. You're going to want to, as an athlete, not just be like, hey, I have 6,000 followers or I have 10,000 followers. You have to go about it from this point. You say, all right, I have 10,000 followers. And whenever I put 10,000 whenever I do one post I get, and I'm just going to use this as an example because it's usually less than this. It's usually 0.10%, but I'm just going to use 10% to make it the money, just make it easy with math. I get 1,000 likes on out of 10,000 followers. One, that shows that you don't have fake followers. Two, it also shows that you have a high conversion rate of people viewing your stuff. So you have to show them the numbers. So you're like, hey, when I post this, I have this. When I post something about water, I get 200 likes compared to 100 likes. Or my impressions are this instead of this. So this is how many people are seeing my thing. And so from doing the math, you could say, hey, if I post one time about your product, I get 2,000 likes. Likelihood of conversion rate, especially on an organic social media post, you're depending on who you are and how quality your people are, you're probably looking at about a 10% go through. So if a 10%, and then out of that 10%, the rest of it's up to their conversion and their funnel. So you kind of have to look at it from that aspect and just say, all right, from 1,000 people, I'm getting 100 people that are going to buy your product that possibly that are leads that I'm going to bring to your store are 100 people. Out of those 100 people, would you like 100 new customers? The conversion rate's usually on them at that point. Like I said, in store or on the phone call or whatever, but you're looking at how would you like me to bring you 100 more people? And if their product is, let's say a water bottle is $20, what's 20 times 100? $2,000. So be like, oh, one post is going to could potentially make you $2,000. There's your math right there. And so you going in and saying, hey, if your math is $2,000, if this is the possibility and this is a goal that we're going to aim for, you can say, hey, but you know what? For $2,000 for one post, I make you 2,000. So for $2,000 a month, I'm going to post for you 10 times instead of one time. So you're basically paying that's a 10x return. Now, if you already have all your assets in place, if you've already kind of went in and figured out who you are, figured out your values, how you're going to write, that's going to help you 10 times more. Be confident in pitching this and saying, hey, these are my values and these are the same values as your customers, because I know that we follow kind of the same trend. So the way I talk, the way my brand is represented aligns with your brand. And these are the things that companies like to hear when it comes to that stuff, because it shows that you're not going to go on there and like promote, throwing drugs in your water or something, so those are the kinds of things that you need to look at and figure it. And the more you become a self leader, the more you work on yourself. And I mean, athletes do a great job at that. I mean, as a business owner myself, I didn't learn until I was at about the 250K a year mark that it's all about mindset. It's all about mindset. When I was first starting, I was like, mindset's a sham. There's no way mindset's this, but it's true. When they say leaders, a business or a person can only get as high as they allow themselves to get. Why do 90% of businesses fail? 90% of businesses fail usually comes down to the owner of the company either not wanting to grow, having some limiting beliefs, or having something that they're not allowing themselves to grow. And so being open to learning and to making risks and to changing, lead by example, and starting off as being a self leader. And so if you're able yourself to go into these companies and be like, starting off, you're able to get that first sale. You learn from it. You learn what not to do. And that's a good start. Email campaigns, hiring a sports marketer to take a percentage share. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'll tell you what, it's better to learn everything yourself before you hire someone else. Not 100%. I'm not saying you have to go and be the best outreach specialist in the world, but like for my example, we're a full service agency. I'm not just a brander. We do web development. We do social media campaigns with assets. We do Google stuff, a lot of Google advertisement and stuff like that. And so I've I'm not an expert at 80% of those. I'm not, but I have gotten to a point where I knew it enough that I can now hire someone, and I've led by example because I've gotten to a point where I've known certain things. And so back to your point of trying to really grow something out of it is your personal brand is about that. It's about yourself. It's about becoming a self leader. It's just going to keep evolving. I'm just going to keep pushing the self leader aspect here because that's really the golden nugget that a lot of, and it's hard work. It's not going to be easy. It never is. We only see the 0.01% that it was easy for, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'm learning a lot of getting a lot of nuggets. Um, a lot. One important thing is that you talk about and you work with your clients is after retirement finding their purpose, and how do you find your purpose after you hang up the jersey, because so for some athletes it's really hard for them to find a purpose after, because
Mm-hmm.
that's all they did is in their whole lifetime is play the sport, school sport, and that's all they know. So when they retire, they don't know what to do. And just recently, Tony Allen from the Boston Celtics, he's retired now, and he got caught up with the NBA health scandal, and they were kind of scamming to get money. And he's so lucky he got a slap on the wrist. A lot of them got a slap on the wrist. They got probation only. They didn't get no jail time, maybe except for two or three of them. And he was able to get 420,000 K from it, and most of it he had to give back anyways because he got caught. And a guy that made a bunch of billions, like where did the money go? Why did he have to do that? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. This is a huge question. If you're willing to stay on for more than 6 more minutes, I can go deep into it depending on how long you want to go in here. But
I mean, you could just touch on, the financial part, after retirement.
so money isn't everything. I mean, as an athlete, especially as a professional athlete, you have a chance to make a lot of money. And especially when you're younger, you don't know. It's not their fault. I mean, when I was 21, 22, 23, I probably would have spent it all too. But being able to just throw, I mean, if you were able to throw $1 million into a retirement fund, or even CDs, you would get a return of about $54,000 a year right now. That's basically a full-time job for somebody. $54,000 a year. So you need to have aspirations, and you need to have things to work for. If you're 21, 22 years old and you're an athlete and you buy everything that you want right away, you're gonna have no purpose. It's and this is just from the physical attributes. Once you start having a family and you start having kids, then new purpose comes along from the family perspective. And so first off, if you're going to, I want to touch on the business side a little bit, because business isn't for everyone. A lot of athletes go out there and the first thing they do is they're like, I want to get an investor, and I'm going to use someone else's money because I have the money as collateral to put up to create this business. All that causes is all those mistakes I told you at the beginning. If you don't know how to self-lead and you don't know how to lead others, your business, you're just throwing money out the window, and 90% of businesses fail anyway. So that's already a risk. The only risk you can take is in yourself, right? And so you want to find something you're passionate about. So when you're just starting out, I like to say finding the why and the who. Like I want to help you find your why, and I want you to help you find your who. And so I like to sit down, and this is part of our framework for any brand that comes to us. More so the personal brands and athletes, less so the corporate, because they already have some sort of defined why and who. It just has to be recalibrated. But for the personal brands and the athletes, they're really just starting off from scratch. And so I say, hey, let's use the money that you've made in the career, make sure that you have enough in savings that you can do this, but then any money that you feel is going to be going into taxes, which is going to be what, about 45-50% of your income, because you're making over the $400,000 threshold. Like, you can now write those off as expenses instead. Use that towards the growth of a business. Let me help you find your why. And so what I like to use is, I, funny enough, like to use the grit scale. I have a defined version of the grit scale that I sit down and say, all right, let's plan what do you want to be doing in 10 years? I get a lot of athletes that come to me and they'll be like, oh, I want to do social media. I had one the other day, a retired athlete the other day. He's like, I want to do social media and I just don't know. I just don't, I want to maybe post for 2 years. I need to have a presence, but I don't know for what. I'm like, well, without defining a goal, you're not going to be able to, it's just, you're doing it for nothing. You're just wasting money. So when I go in and say, hey, we need to build your foundations first, most of them actually come to me because no one does this. No one comes to them and says, hey, we need to build a foundation. Most of them are willing to take their money. And I'm like, funny enough, what I'm doing is actually saving them from losing money and finding their purpose, but they're somehow detracted away from having to look at the foundations. Businesses do the same thing because they just think that if I throw money at marketing, I'm going to grow a business. It doesn't work that way. And that's why branding is so important, because you need to build those foundations. Let us help you find your why. For a personal brand, we do have to find out what you want. You may have some inklings of it. A lot of times, like, there's nitpicky things in there, like, oh, I know I want to work with animals, or I used to love selling, and maybe I was in sales for a couple of years, and I'm like, all right, that's a good start. Let's define that further so that we can find an audience for you bases off your existing fan base that you already have, and start narrowing that down and fine-tuning your messaging, fine-tuning who you are. And so now you start to have a direction you can go. And so you take that 10-year goal. And it's funny because business life is very similar to, I hate to use this because I don't want to get into conspiracy of the Matrix and being in a simulation theory or anything, but there is a sense of energy that says, hey, like for me, for instance, my dad was an athlete. I was an athlete for a little bit, and now I work with athletes. And so there was a part of me that always wanted to, I had a direction of, I knew I wanted to work in this space. And I, if it wasn't for me, I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't have that aspiration, and so you have to find something like that. And then you break it down into a 5 and a 3 year and say, all right, let's pick things that are a little less concrete. Like, oh, if I want to be an athlete, I'm not an athlete, sorry. If I want to be a veterinarian, okay, let's talk about what you're going to be in 7 years. Oh, well, I want to help people with animals. I want to do this. I maybe want to do, build some commercial places for some, and there you go. So now you have a 7, and then you go down to 3. Okay, I need to learn a little bit about, commercial real estate, or I need to learn more about how land, because as you can see now, you're so far away from, now we're talking about commercial properties when over here we were talking about being a veterinarian. And so there's goals, and then you get down to your 1-year goal, and those are so vague that they're going to be ever switching. I want to get a marketing degree, or I want to get a business degree, or I want to get a sales job. Like, those are all going to be things that are going to be ever changing as you evolve to this lower path. And then once you get the 3 year, those will evolve, and you get the 5. But I like to start there, because then we have a defining path. Once we have a defining path, you then feel like you have some purpose. You can start building that legacy, and we want to utilize you in the sports game as well, and the things that you've done in your story. And like I said earlier, evolve it with your other passion. And that's when you start building a roadmap towards how you're going to make money in this. And then what we do is we come in and we help build that strategy and those assets to help you get to that next spot. Some athletes want to be a personal brand, but a lot of times they do evolve into a much more corporate or consumer brand. And so it's nice to find those values and find that story first, because once they bring on employees, those employees need to match the same values, because if they don't, then you're screwed. So, and you're going to have a lot of turnover. So you kind of have to start that's usually the first path. It's very coachy. And so I personally add a lot of coaching aspects into our implementation process, but it's all about those foundations. Find those foundations first, find your why, because that's what's going to make you happy. Money's part of it, but it's only one piece of the pie. If you don't have a purpose, and I heard a story similar to yours, an NFL player stopped playing. He started selling Pokemon cards, and apparently he scammed a whole bunch of people. And I didn't hear the whole story, but he got banned from the Facebook marketplace because I think he had over like almost very similar to what you said. It was like $600,000 worth of sales on there of Pokemon cards. I'm like, really? Like, so that's really where I would start. For instance, have a business account. I have half of our money in IRAs and 401ks and CDs that's just accumulating money at this point. And it's not as much as I pay. And I don't pay myself that much. I don't, because I don't need it, because I enjoy the growth of what I'm doing. And that's what you really need to get what athletes really need to figure out is, what am I going to enjoy doing? And so it's really a psychological counterpart in figuring out what's going to make you happy. Because if you don't, you're just going to have burnout. And you're going to get, that's when the scandals start coming around.
Cool. So if somebody wants to hire you, how can they hire you, and what's the cost?
Yeah, so the cost varies. I'll be honest, the cost varies. There's a lot contributed to our cost. We have they can find us at our website. You can go to our website at creatitive.com. You can find us on our YouTube channel at Creative. If you want to reach out to me, you can find us on LinkedIn. We do have a course out right now that's completely about mindset and leadership. You can find that through the website as well, under our course section, if you want to just kind of get an inkling. But a lot of our price points really vary on customized based off of multiple things. One, the type of brand you are. Are you a personal brand? Are you a corporate brand? And how much money are you already accumulating month to month to month? If you're, for instance, a corporate brand, and you're already at a stage where you're making 1 to 3 mil a year as a local brick and mortar, for instance, there's science behind how much money should go into marketing. There's a certain percentage. So we usually like to go off of that percentage to kind of come up with a rough number of what seems fit. And so you could, for that instance, 1 mil a year, I think 10% you're looking at 10% as 100 a year. So that's how much you should go be putting in your marketing. But if you're a personal brand, you're just starting out, I would say you're looking anywhere from, for the foundational elements in the coaching package. It varies, like I said, but you're looking anywhere between 10 and about 60K to kind of push forward on getting those foundational elements, getting your direction, and some of the implementation set up and the strategy set up for you to be in the right direction on where you're going.
So what if somebody can't afford that? What's the next step?
So the next step is this. If you're looking, we are in the process right now. I'm trying to develop a personal branding course, and kind of try to help people that are in, like, let's say college, that are looking to grow their personal brand. We're trying to figure out a good number for that. Right now, I haven't really figured out a good thing for that. And that's where our courses are going to come in to really help. Is, we're going to allow all our courses be purchased at a one-time fee, so they can kind of go in and they can pick whatever they're looking for at that particular moment. Or they can hire us on as a coach, for like 10K a year to have us come in and do a lot of that brand discovery foundation without any of the assets, to kind of help get them going. But usually, if that's not even affordable yet, I usually say to most clients, our prospects, hey, like, you're just not ready yet to hire outside. You may not just be at a point yet where I feel like you should hire outside help. There's one thing that I learned in business, and this will be the last thing I say. I learned in business, you hear a lot of larger companies or business developers or sports marketers say, you need to delegate. You need to start delegating to other people. And then you get this stressful situation where you delegate everything out and then you have no money again. But you need to be smart. And there are certain things that you're going to come to realize that as you're growing, that, hey, I still need to do this myself. Like I was saying at the beginning, like I've learned this. I'm going to start delegating this out because I don't have time. But maybe I'm still the personal brand. I still need to be the one that goes to the local veterinarians, for instance, and trying to get those deals. I still need to build those incomes myself. And so that's when yourself focus on being a self leader, learning those attributes, get used to start. Don't allow your coaches, I mean, your coaches and your team, they're there for you. They're assets. They're going to help schedule stuff for you and stuff like that. But somewhat don't let them. Have your own schedule. Start learning how to time block your time. Start saying, hey, for 2 hours out of the day, I'm going to start learning how to do outreach, for instance, or I'm going to spend 2 hours a week or 4 hours a week to go. I wouldn't spend any more than that because you still have to worry about the sport, but just start learning some of the trades and practices. Don't go out there and buy yourself a logo. Don't go out there and buy yourself that, because that stuff's important. But you also don't want to, I've always said cheap solutions are more expensive than the value-based ones. You're going to be making something, then you'll never use it again. So just focus on yourself, becoming that personal brand, and start posting, and things will start to accumulate. You'll start building momentum, and plan on hiring someone when you feel like there's budget there. When you start going, okay, 10% of what I earned is now enough for me to hire like me, for instance, or hire somebody else, and just start trying to become that self leader, learning what you value, what you like, the kind of companies that you want to work with, and finding multiple ways to bring income in besides just the sponsorships. Be like, what other things can I do here so I can have one or two outlets here where I'm bringing in income? If it's a career, it's a career. If it's a small business on the side where you're creating your own products, it's that too. But everyone starts somewhere, and so usually in that first couple of years of business, it's usually all you anyway. So that's probably what I would recommend if you're just starting out.
Okay. Appreciate it. My last question is, I know you're hiring. What positions are you hiring for?
Right now, yeah. So it's a hard one. We just kind of went through. Right now, we're hiring. I'm hiring a graphic designer. We're hiring a new another video editor for our channel. And um, we're also looking to hire someone to just go out there and do some sales for us. Go out there and an SDR, just go out there and find companies that within our matrix, that in our niche, that want to potentially work with us, to get them on the phone with me.
Okay. All right. Cool. That's all I have for now. Thank you for your time. Thank you for, all the tips and advice that you put in there. And hopefully we sit down again. All right. All right. Thank you.
Thank you. You have a good one.
All right.